don't have a ton of time. I want to get to China. So I think you want to talk about immediate, let's say, threats or problems. What's going on in Taiwan, the encirclement, what China's doing. There's sort of a silent Cold War that's been going on that's becoming less and less silent. If you go to Africa, we were talking about Africa, America has sort of lost Africa, and China's moved in very successfully at taking infrastructure gigs and paying for them, and then taking, minerals and rare earth minerals especially, but everything basically from Africa. And I see that, and I see that we're sort of heading towards this, Taiwan's our Poland. And, what do you see happening there?
Well, when I was 13 in Alberta, I went to a trade fair in Edmonton. It was the first time I'd ever been to anything like that. It was a Chinese trade fair.
Mm-hmm.
It was just after China had opened up trading relationships with the West. And there was Chinese industrial products on display there, and they looked like North American products from like 1952.
Yeah.
And everyone hoped that China could industrialize and stop its people from starving. And as they got richer and more integrated into the free market economy, that the precepts of the free world would become self-evident to the Chinese, and that they would moderate their pathologically totalitarian stance. And that was a reasonable experiment, especially given the fact that no one in their right mind wanted China to stay poor enough so that a substantial proportion of its population starved. And that stopped happening. I mean, when I was very young, there was still starvation in China, and there isn't now. And you could even say that opening up free exchange with China ameliorated the problem of absolute poverty in that country. And I think it was reasonable to run the experiment to see that whether or not, if you made a country like that integrated into the Western economy, that it might tilt towards freedom.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And now we know, okay, well, we're not sure what to do about that.
Yeah.
And it is extraordinarily complex, because is China a threat? Well, they support North Korea, so that's like a clue. And they're setting their society up in a manner that's so totalitarian that we can't even imagine it. There's 700 million closed-circuit television cameras in China. They use gait recognition.
And they're exporting that technology to others.
Of course they are, and we're foolish enough to be using it. Airports are always the harbinger of totalitarianism in the West. And we could easily, here's an example. I was just in the UK, and my security team rented a truck. And the UK, in their wisdom, have knocked the speed limits there down to 20 miles an hour. And so your truck communicates with the signs. And every time you go 2 miles an hour over the goddamn speed limit, your truck beeps at you. You might say, well, calm down, Dr. Peterson, that really doesn't signify anything. It's like it signifies the all-seeing eye of the state. And if you're too goddamn blind to see it, that's not a consequence of my, what would you say, hypersensitivity to the totalitarian landscape. It's exactly what you'd expect. We'll be surrounded by machines that watch us. It's highly likely. That outcome is highly likely. It's more likely we'll go the Chinese direction than they'll go our direction. It's an easier pathway to slip down. And the Chinese, well, as I said, their cameras use gait recognition, so you can't even cover your face, right? They know where you are and what you're doing all the time. They've hooked that all up to a social credit system, and you are so screwed if your social credit system falls below the acceptable minimum that you might as well not even exist.
Right.
And so, well, that's an awful scenario.
Yeah.
What are we going to do about it? We don't know.
Yeah.
Chasing the Russians into the hands of the Chinese isn't a wise initial move, I wouldn't say. And we've managed to do that quite successfully over the last 10 years. Now, what mitigates against that? The Chinese have their own problems, right? They're economically unstable. They have a cataclysmic birth rate. Their population is rapidly aging. In 10 years, it will be difficult for them to mount an army, although they have a very large number of people, because their society is aging so dramatically.
Yeah, but they still have the
largest. It might be that we can wait them out.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
Yeah.
Now, I would say at minimum, the Chinese communists, like bullies everywhere, respond quite well to formidable power.
Mm-hmm.
And luckily enough, the Americans have it still. And so, and under Trump, they're likely to maintain it and use it. And I would say that should help people sleep better at night.